آله وصحبه ولا يا رب سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي بعد. First of all, I'm very happy to be able to join your community. I'm from New York. And today, in this brief few moments that we have together, I wanted to address a topic that has been ignored by our community for too long. It's something that is affecting our families. It's something that is affecting you, some of you at your jobs, some of you at your careers, some of you at your schools. It's an issue that we suffer from and we might not even know it. It's an issue that we suffer from, but we stay hush-hush about it because it's too shameful. It's a topic that we know exists, but we want to ignore it because it's just better that way. Today we are briefly speaking about mental health. Mental health. We are speaking about addiction. We're speaking about trauma. We're speaking about depression, anxiety. We're speaking about bulimia. We're speaking about anorexia. We're speaking about these psychological issues that affect 1 in 5 Muslims in this country. 1 in 5. So if there are about 100 of you right now in this room, probably 20 of you, somewhat loosely or closely or directly, clinically or somewhat at a certain level, affects you. There is a high school sister in this community, in our community, in any community, in Muslim community, that's suffering from depression and cutting herself. There is a college brother who is addicted to drugs. There is a 30-year-old mother with 3 children who has so much anxiety that she doesn't get out the house. There is a 50-year-old father who has intermittent explosive disorder, gets really angry and throws a fit in the house, causes a chaos. There is a 70-year-old grandmother, came from Pakistan, living with her son and daughter-in-law, feels she's not being treated the way she should be treated, feels that something is wrong, and she thinks of death every single day. These are real people. And I'm telling you these because I deal with them on a daily basis. By profession, I'm in the field of mental health, and I'm a therapist by profession. And also being a da'i and giving khutbahs in many masajid and talks at college campuses, I can't tell you the number of people that come up to me and say, Brother Muhammad, I'm dealing with this. My father, he has bipolar disorder, he goes crazy in the house, quote unquote, and we're all suffering. But he doesn't want to seek help because it just looks bad. We want to keep it a family secret. Our prestige will go away. It's a problem. My cousin, he's addicted to drugs. My aunt, she wants to act like it doesn't exist. It's just a bad company. His bad friends. No, it's at a clinical level now. And so, in this brief talk, brief discussion, inshallah, I wanted to not go into full detail about, trauma, abuse, go into full detail about addiction, because that will take hours. What I'm going to do instead, inshallah, is address what I call the 4 myths. 4 myths that I feel that are holding our community back. 4 myths that we have about mental illness that I feel that we need to address as soon as we can. These are myths that are at the core of why we don't do anything about mental health. Why we're not even comfortable. Matter of fact, as I'm speaking to you, I see some of you are very little uncomfortable. I read body languages, right? So I see some of you sitting a little tight, getting a little closer, like, I don't know what this brother's talking about. This is getting kind of nervous. This is, shame. What is he saying on the minbar? And I see some of you are very uncomfortable. That's okay. I'm glad I could do that. I'm glad we're here. We're talking about this. We're using the month of Ramadan to address something that's very important. And so, the 4 myths. Inshallah, I have so much I want to discuss, but we only have 20 minutes. So I have to pick and choose from what I want to share. Allah, if I sit here, I could probably talk to you for a few hours. And I do seminars that are like 8 hours long. Okay, so I was telling Brother Muhsin, I don't get warmed up till like 45 minutes. At 45 minutes, I feel like I think I'm ready to do a talk. Before that, I'm not just like getting started, you know. So I have to really try my best to make this into 20 minutes. That's it. And you're gonna go home and you want to, have iftar with your family, so I'm gonna stay here for iftar, no problem. And so in 20 minutes, the 4 myths that I want to share. And then inshallah, at the end, if we have time, I want to share the 2 things that I think we need to do as community, as families, to be able to start to deal with this, to be able to address this, and especially help friends and families that we know that are dealing with mental illnesses. So the myth number 1 is that mental illness is actually not an illness. That's the first myth that we have. That mental illness is not actually illness. When we think of mental illness, the first thing that comes to mind is pagal, majnoon, crazy. That's the first thing that comes to your mind. But that's a category of mental illness. It's a psychotic illnesses. That's a spectrum of mental illness. There are a whole host of other mental illnesses, emotional challenges that are not hospitalized in psychiatric units. That are you dealing with in your families, you're dealing with at your workplace, dealing with on a day-to-day basis. Now the reason why we confuse mental illness, because you say, you know what, I feel sad too sometimes. I'm sometimes a little bit worried. We all are worried. We all are sometimes sad. But when it becomes a clinical level, it's different. That sadness is to the point that you can't go to work. You don't want to get up from your bed. The anxiety is to the level that you don't want to even apply for a new job. The anxiety to the level you don't want to even open up the Quran, because every time you open it up, you get anxiety. Because you're like, I can't memorize this. It's at a clinical level. And so we confuse mental illness as being not a real disease. Even the word mental, right? Mental illness, mental health, mental. It is a stigma in our society, not just Muslim community in general, what the word mental means. Or psychology, psycho, or psychotherapy, tropic medication, psycho. See the word psycho now? Psycho, mental. And you start to have this perception of psycho and mental is. And that's part of the problem, why we have difficulty understanding what mental illness is. Mental illness, my brothers and sisters, is illness just like any other illness. Fever, sore throat, you have kidney problems, you have diabetes, cancer. Mental illness is just like any other illness. In fact, in our history, in the 8th century, from Baghdad all the way to Cairo, we had the first psychiatric hospitals in the world. People like Ibn Sina were the first to write about treatments about anxiety and depression in the 8th century. This is in our tradition. Muslims were the first to treat folks with mental illnesses with dignity, that they too deserve treatment. They too deserve to be called human beings. They too are slaves of Allah. And they just need treatment just like people with physical illnesses. We Muslims were the first to do it. Yet we find in current time, in our Muslim community, we have some of the worst stigmas about mental illnesses. Matter of fact, Imam Ghazali, rahimahullah, used to write about how children learn fear from negative experiences that they have. It's in our tradition. And so the first misconception we have is that mental illness is not an illness. Second misconception, number 2, that mental illness is caused by jinn, magic, and envy. So it's hasad, al-ayn, or sihr. That's all it is. And I know the Imam either talked about it or he's going to speak about it. He talked about it? MashaAllah, good. So I don't have to address this too much. So we know, I'm sure the Imam addressed it, MashaAllah, that mental illnesses isn't just about sihr and ayn and hasad. That's part of it. It's true, those things do affect mental illnesses, but they're not the only ones. Matter of fact, if you speak to people who do ruqya, and I spoke to some of the ulama that do ruqya, and they told me that, you know what, the steps we take, the first thing is making sure they have no physical problems. Second step is making sure they have no emotional, psychological issues. Then we go to the third, which is ruqya. Because if you don't address those things, the organic issues, then you just blame it on the spirits. Blame it on the magic. You know why we do that? Because it's easier. It's easier to say somebody did magic on me. Is that I know is my family over there. My daughter got married and that person didn't want to see that my daughter got married to a good man. And so he did, did sihr or, evil eye. Because it's easier. You know why? Because when you have illness in your kidney, it's in your kidney. When you have illness in your mind, it's right where you are. You see? So as if something is wrong with you as a person. If you say, something wrong with the kidney, then you could say, it's my kidney. No, it's not me, it's my kidney, right here, this one. I could point it out. When the illness is here, then it's like something must be wrong with me. So let me blame it on somebody else. Let me blame it on the jinns. Let me blame it on the envy. It's true, as Prophet said in hadith. It's true. Of course, a Muslim will accept it. That's what makes me different as a therapist who's a Muslim from my non-Muslim colleagues. Is that when I have a Muslim client, if I see a Muslim patient, sometimes I would say, you know what, maybe you should see an imam. Sounds to me this is a little bit more than psychological illness. I'm not going to go into what our criteria I use to make sure the distinctions. But my point being is that we can't blame just envy and hasad and so forth. We have to also address the illness that we have. If I asked you, how many of you here have diabetes? And trust me, in the Desi community, we have a whole lot of diabetes. And you would happily raise your hand. Some people would be proud even. I take metformin. You just raise your hand. You no problem. But if I told you how many have anxiety, your heart paces sometimes. None of you, no, not me, not my family. Nobody in my family. I come from a good background. No one has that. You wouldn't raise your hand? Why is that a shame? If your pancreas isn't producing insulin, or your blood in your system isn't breaking down the sugar, you have no problem saying that. But when there is actually an issue, when your chemicals based on your genetics or whatever the case might be, you have difficulty accepting it. And that's what's holding our community back, because we're unwilling to accept mental illness. What is mental illness caused by? Sometimes it's biology. Purely biology. It's your genes. Just like some cholesterol or half your eating habit, also half of cholesterol due to your genes. You can't help it. Sometimes is due to injury. You get into a car accident, trauma to the head. Sometimes abuse. I wanted to focus on, especially the organizer have asked me to talk about the masjid folks here, asked me to talk about specifically abuse, trauma, and addiction. Abuse is sometimes caused by mental illness. Sometimes it's caused by mental illness because it's folks who are reacting to their illness. And definitely after you've been abused, it definitely causes mental illness, for sure. You suffer from it. Addiction, it could have been because of the choice they made, sure. It could have been the school environment and they wanted to try out. They were bored, they were curious. Try out the natural, and see how it is. Have a little dime, no problem. And then it actually becomes an addiction. At that point, it's an illness. And so, mental illness is an illness. Number 3. I'm going pretty fast. I'm skipping a lot of details in between. But I just want to introduce the topic to you. Number 3 is that having mental illness must mean I have a low iman. We confuse psychological issues with spiritual issues. There's a clear distinction. If you tell me, Brother Muhammad, I'm gaining a lot of weight. I think I have to make more zikr. No, you need to go to gym. And you got to stop eating too much biryani. That's the problem. But you making dhikr, it ain't going to help your weight problem. But it might. Make dua, inshallah, Allah might help you. It's true. But generally speaking, your physical problem has nothing to do with your spiritual or iman. It goes back and forth. They're connected, true. But it's not direct correlation. And so sometimes we think if I have mental illness, it must mean I have a iman problem. Sometimes your own psychology affects the way you perceive Islam. And this is something very important. I'm going to say this, and I know it's going to be very controversial, but I have to say it. The way your psychology is, your background, how you are raised, how you are treated as a child by your parents, directly affects the type of Islam you embrace. So if you grew up in a very tough, rough environment, you tend to practice Islam that's very rough and tough. You often find young people becoming religious for the first time. We have a crisis in the ummah of young people that are going into extremism. Don't blame the conspiracies. Don't blame the media. Those are a big factor. Imperial powers going into nations where folks don't have jobs. There is no opportunities. Of course, those are big factors. But we also have to embrace the fact that there are some folks, and I've met them in Egypt. Allah Azim, I'm telling you. There are young folks I met that are inclined to these ways of thinking. Even they know that Islam has no place for killing innocent people. They know that. But they're attracted to that version of Islam, the Khawarij mentality. Because I promise you, if some of these folks weren't ISIS, weren't Al-Qaeda, they would have been thugs and gangs to begin with. They would have been killers regardless. They just found Islam to be an excuse. You find Muslims who were activists before they were religious, they were very activists, all about like fighting this and fighting that and going to this rally, going this. And you find when they come to Islam, they're also activists. And they're like, activism is the way to go. That's the Islam, that's the real Islam. Some of you were very by yourself, to yourself, and you attack to Islam, that's the way to yourself. Your psychology has a huge impact on your spirituality. And unless you accept that fact, unless you see that fact, you're going to be in denial. And so mental illness is an illness, and Iman has nothing to do with it. It's an illness. Matter of fact, in the Muslim community, we have difficulty even accepting pain. We think if you have pain, it must mean something is wrong with your Iman. We find in the Quran, in Surah Yusuf, classical example, Yaqub alayhi salam loses his son. He loses his son, and then he loses Benyamin. And then what happens? What the Quran says? وَتَوَلَّ عَنْهُمْ فَقَالَ يَا أَسَفَا عَلَى يُوسُف. He was in pain. Matter of fact, the Quran says his eyes became white because he was a suppressor. He was someone that was suppressing so much sadness. He took a physical manifestation. We call it, your psychomotor. Pain is real. Prophet ﷺ felt pain. We find in the seerah, Prophet ﷺ goes and he goes to visit the grave of his mother in Al-Abwa, and he's crying, crying like a child. A man in his 50s, crying like a child. Pain is real. When he's lost his son Ibrahim, he was crying. Having pain is normal. It makes you human. Oh, you should have tawakkul. How dare you cry? How dare you feel sad? No, that's how Allah made us. It's okay to be sad. It's okay to have, feel anxious sometimes. It's human. And so, what about those folks who are suffering from actual mental illnesses? We don't tell someone who has diabetes that, what? You have Iman problem. Someone who has a heart issue, you have an Iman problem. Pray more. Make more istighfar. Your heart problem will go away. Okay, maybe istighfar, maybe Allah will bless you. You will improve your heart condition, possibly, inshallah. But you don't tell that to someone, do you? But you do that when it comes to anxiety. You do that when a sister is going through divorce. And tell sister, have sabr. She's in severe depression. Someone who has, eating disorder, have more tawakkul. That's not going to solve it. It's an illness that we have to treat. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not give you these illnesses because something is wrong with you. Someone is not in an abusive relationship because they deserve it. Someone is, being hit and beaten by her husband. It's not because something is wrong with her. Someone is going through depression not because they made a lot of sins. You don't tell the imam who has diabetes, imam, you must be making a lot of guna. That's why. You have heart problems because you're making a lot of sins. You don't do that. But why do we do that to people who are suffering from mental illnesses? Why do we do that? It's just wrong. And so, number 4, mental illnesses can be treated just like any other illnesses. Now, as a Muslim, we know that Quran is very important. Quran is a shifa. Yes. As a Muslim, that we know that we make dua to Allah and Allah helps us. We turn to Allah for all our needs. True. We know that we pray salah to calm ourselves down, to talk to Allah with our needs. True. But I think we do an injustice when myself as a speaker, when anyone else say, you have any other problems? You have depression, anxiety? Turn to Allah. It sounds great in a speech. But it's not right. Because what you're telling people is folks who have some sadness that are normal. Sadness who are part of life. But not people who have illnesses. That's not right. You know, Islam has a lot to offer when it comes to happiness, when it comes to how you communicate. That's been my studies for the last several years. You know, at Oak Tree Institute that I'm part of, that's what I teach. You know, one of my passion being in the field of psychology is to look at how the Quran and the Sirah deals with human problems. How does the Quran deal with sadness? How does the Quran deal with happiness? How does the Quran deal with communication in family, in work, in relationships? That's my passion, true. But at the same time, we know as a Muslim we have a good coping strategy, true. Having Iman, it gives you a lot of coping skills. In fact, studies show people who are religious, they do better when they're in treatment for mental illnesses. That is true. But coping is not cure. Let me repeat that, if you're following me. You guys still awake? Coping is not cure. Coping is coping. It helps you. But in this country, in the West, these illnesses have been studied. You know, things have been developed. You know, al-hikmah dalatul mu'min. You know, wisdom is lost property of the believer. And you know, it's part of what we learn from the rest. The tools that they have. Time management, for example. Yes, Salah teaches us time management. It teaches us, you know what, 5 times a day you take a break. You manage your time. But in this country, there are tools that have been developed. It's not haram to use those things. You know, we have a problem where we Islamicize everything. We Islamicize everything. You see, there's no such thing as Islamic chemistry. It's just chemistry. If I tell you chemistry, you know, you have hydrogen, you have molecules, you have water, H2O. There is no Islamic version to that story. It's just H2O. But we tend to have this, and this is a movement that has happened in the last century, where we Islamicize everything. But sometimes it's not healthy. I don't believe in Islamic psychology. I'm being honest with you. I don't believe in Islamic therapy. You ask me what therapy, then I'll tell you if it's Islamic or not. It should be ilmun nafs insaniya, not ilmun nafs islamiyya. That's a problematic thing to be. Because it's true, of course, social sciences is affected by your faith, by your morality. Okay, I think I'm losing some of you. It's getting too complicated. Okay, let me make it more basic. What I'm telling you is that therapy is not haram. What I'm telling you is that if you come to me and say, you know what, is psychoanalytic therapy halal? Well, I have to look at it and see. Maybe what Freud said about dreams, I might not fully agree. Cognitive behavioral therapy, no problem. How you change your mind, how you change your thoughts, very nice. Imam Ghazali, Imam Ibn Qayyim talked about that. Snowball, that's world, and your thoughts become more and more and more. Tabari talked about it. Almost cognitive behavioral therapy. I said, that's very good. You come to me and tell me about existential therapy. I said, no, something's wrong with that. Because existential therapy says you make your own meaning. No, we don't make our own meaning. Allah gave us meaning for life. Allah gave that meaning already. I can't make up my own meanings of our life. So you tell me, I ask you, what therapy? Which model? Is therapy halal? Let me get the Islamic counseling. There's no such thing. As a Muslim, I bring in the faith. It gives me coping. It helps me. But it's by itself. You know, Usama ibn Shuraik comes to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, should we seek medical treatment for our illnesses? Prophet says yes. Comes in hadith in Bukhari. Allah did not create any illness except they created its cure. And so it's religious to seek cure. If you come to me with a heart problem, right? You come to me with a heart problem. Do I go to you, brother, make dua? Brother Muhammad, I have a heart problem. Do I go to a cardiologist or do I make dua? Which one? You don't ask that question. You go to a doctor and you make dua. Why is it that when it comes to depression, we go, Brother Muhammad, should I be turning to Allah or should I go see a psychologist? Should I go see a psychiatrist? Why do we do that? You know? Why is that when it comes to mental illness, we have that problem? Because Prophet ﷺ also taught dua for your stomach pain. How many of you, when you have a stomach pain, you only make dua and don't go to a doctor? You don't. Yes, I know the dua, Allahumma inni a'udhu bika min al-huzni wal hazan. Yes, make that dua, of course, make it. But then seek treatment. It's not if or none. It's not this or that. It's both. Tie your camel and have trust in Allah. Do both. Seek the treatment that you need. And so, my dear brothers and sisters, as we're wrapping up this point number 4, the fourth misconception, that there is treatment for mental illnesses. Mental illnesses treatment varies. For some folks, depending on the illness that they have, they might need counseling. They might need therapy. Just talking to someone, working with someone. And for some folks, they need medication. You guys see a psychiatrist. And we have, mashallah, a lot of psychiatrists in our community. We have therapists in our community. We have social workers in our community. Go seek the help that you need for your family. You know, we have a very interesting scholar in our history in the 9th century, and I love him. His name is Abu Zayd al-Balkhi. Abu Zayd al-Balkhi is someone that you should know about. He is a 9th century, he was born in Khurasan, he grew up in Baghdad, he learned in Baghdad. Matter of fact, he's one of the first, even wrote a tafsir volume, a Najm al-Quran. But he's also one of the first to write about cognitive behavioral therapy in the world. He's one of the first to write about how you should have good thoughts and positive optimism and ideas that can help you when you're going through a tough time in your life. He actually used to criticize doctors in his time about the fact that they were focusing too much on physical illness and not also on emotional, psychological illnesses. And so, part of therapy is also just going and talking to someone. You find Prophet ﷺ, right? Plenty of examples in the seerah where someone comes to him, a young man comes to Ya Rasulullah, give me permission to commit zina. And he has a talk with him, he has a dialogue with him. That's cognitive behavioral therapy. You're changing someone's mindset, how they look at things, how they view things. That helps you, that treats you. You know, in this country and in the last centuries, things have been developed, treatment models have been developed, medicine have been developed. And so you just can't go to an imam and a scholar and say, you know, I have a depression, I have anxiety, I went through abuse, I went through trauma, I get flashbacks. Every once in a while I keep remembering my husband's hand coming and, you know, I keep remembering that. A young child, you know, in my therapy, I all the time, I'm working with a high school sister who was touched inappropriately by her father, religious family. And she keeps getting flashback. It's affecting her now, how she deals with men, how she deals with our peers. It's real. These are real issues. And so they need to seek treatment. They need to seek the help that they need. And so just like in the past you had, you know, folks in the village who would give you a little bit of things from the tree and you would take it. Now there are licensures. Now there's medical school. Just like that in mental illnesses as well, there are trainings. You learn how to talk to people. You learn how to listen to people. You learn how to help them change their mindset. You learn how to dig up the old trauma and see what's really affecting them inside. And we learn to do that. And so, how much time do I have? Can I go on? How much time do I have? How long do you want me to speak for? How long? 10 minutes? Very long time? No, I'm glad you're enjoying it. But we have to wrap up. How long? 15? Khair, inshallah. We'll end at 15. So, I wanted to just briefly mention these 4 misconceptions about mental illness being an illness, that it's not a jinn, hasad, envy problem, and that there is a cure. And finally, I wanted to wrap up by telling about just 2 things I feel, inshallah, as a community we need to do. This is a huge topic, the next 2 part, and I don't think I could do it justice, but I want to just bring them up because I think they're very, very important. Number 1, there are 2 things in our families and our community that we need. Number 1, we need to be able to have safe space, a communication and safe space. And number 2, we need to be able to have emotional sensitivity towards people who are going through a difficult time. And I didn't even get to give you the statistics on abuse in our community. I didn't even get the chance to give you a statistic about the amount of drugs that are abused in the Muslim countries. Did you know that 6% of folks in Pakistan are addicted to some sort of drugs? 6%. 12.2 metric tons of amphetamines were confiscated in Saudi Arabia, just like a few years ago. These are real. The biggest producers of cannabis is Morocco. Biggest producers of heroin, Afghanistan. In the United States, 20-something% of young people do either weed Muslims. Alcoholic. You know, in New York City, in Bronx Science, for example, or Brooklyn Tech, rather, the kids tell me that close to 50% of Desi kids, they do weed. 50%. Matter of fact, now we have advanced. We're actually the sellers now. You know, we have one in our community. He told me he makes about 40,000. Pretty good for a month. He deals big. It's not just dimes. He's dealing big. And these are real issues, abuse in the Muslim community that we have. You know, close to 1 in 3 women is either abused, physically hurt, forced to sexual relationship, and these are happening in our community. 3 women is killed in a day, according to some statistics. But in our community, you know, it's a shame. We can't talk about it. Sisters can't seek the help that they need because they feel they'll bring ruin and bad name to their family. So they stay in that abusive relationship. You know, in a masjid, and I was telling Brother Mohsen this, in a masjid in New York, I got a phone call just a few months ago at a HIFZ program that they hired this person to clean, the Muslim, clean the bathroom. And he was molesting several of the kids. And they found out in the HIFZ program, all of a sudden, the kids are acting weird. Kids are having behavior issues. And they don't know why. What's going on? Why are they acting out? Because you see, kids, they don't take their pain and they cry. No, they act out physically, aggressive in the schools. So we have to be able to address these issues. And so, 2 things, as I had mentioned, that I think we need to really work on in the families and in our community. Number 1 is to be able to have an open communication. We have to have a safe space. And we find in the Quran plenty of examples. Yusuf as-salam comes to his father. Inni ra'aytu ahada ashara kawkaban, and he comes to his father and talks about his dreams. It's very simple, yet very profound. And then we find Ismail as-salam comes to his son. Ibrahim as-salam comes to his son. Inni ara fil manami anni adbah, you know, I see in my dreams. It's sensitive conversation. We find in a hadith that a young woman comes to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, is in Ibn Majah, comes to Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Ya Rasulullah, my father, is going to get controversial, my father, he's forcing me to marry my relative. This young woman comes to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and complains to the Prophet that, Rasulullah, my father wants me to marry my relative. When the Prophet heard this, he said, you have 2 choices. First of all, this is not a matter between your parents. This is a matter between you. It's your choice. Either 1, you can accept the proposal, or 2, you can reject it. It's up to you. And she said, Ya Rasulullah, I actually liked him anyways. She was a little bit of a troll. She was a little bit of a leader. She wanted to make sure she has a right. He said, I liked him anyways, but I just wanted to make sure. You know? Now I could talk about all sorts of issues about the issue, but my focus here is that the fact that this young woman felt comfortable coming to the Rasulullah to talk about a sensitive family matters. And sometimes we find, you know, if someone comes to the Imam and address something, you should go to Imam about family problems. These are our family stuff. You should keep it inside. Even people are suffering. No, you should keep it inside. Another example comes, another narration, where Ali ibn Abi Talib narrates that a woman comes to Rasulullah and says, Ya Rasulullah, my husband is abusive. My husband is abusive. And he tells her, tell him that you are in my protection. There's a threat from Rasulullah. There's a warning from Rasulullah. So the woman goes back. She comes back again. Ya Rasulullah, he didn't listen. So he takes his shirt, he rips it, this little piece, and he gives it to her, like a summon. Tell him, this is the messenger of Allah. She comes back, Ya Rasulullah, he beat me more. And he raised his hand to the heaven, and he made dua against this man. This is serious. But my focus here is that this young woman and this woman felt comfortable coming to Rasulullah ﷺ and addressing the issue. Do we have a comfortable space in our families for our children to bring up the issues that they have? Our teenagers who are going through puberty, can they talk to you as a father? Or if your child, I have a young woman that I'm working with, she was abused. She was molested by her Quran teacher. Is your children willing to and able to come to you? Is our sister in the community who are in an abusive relationship, can they come to Imam? Or will they be shamed because they brought it up? And let's not even argue about the ayat in the Quran about, adruhunna. Let's not go there. That's not my place. I'm not a scholar. I'm not going to argue that point. But vast majority of the folks who quote that ayat, I could tell you, and I've dealt with these, perpetrators in my therapy as well. They will quote the ayat to you, but it's not like they went in the Quran that says, I'm having some problems with my wife, or I don't like what she's doing. Let me find solution. 1, 2, 3. Solution. Okay, let me go beat her. That's not what happened. They got angry, they did what they did, then they went to Quran and found excuse for their behavior. Most of the time. And so, do we have a safe space in our families for our cousin, nephew, uncle, brother, sister, son, daughter to come and have conversation about addiction that they're dealing with? Can your teenage son who is now addicted and takes Xanax? I had that case just very recently. We had to hospitalize him in our community in Jamaica, Queens. He was going to kill himself. Took a knife. And the parents still think it's about the bad friends. Brother, please don't tell anyone. I don't want to send him to the hospital. Can you just come talk to him? He almost killed himself. Do we have a safe place where people can come and address these topics? Can we deal with it as a community? Can we be brave enough to go beyond our stigmas and really bring out solutions? Solution as a community level. Why is it that in our masajid we cannot have AA meetings? Alcoholic Anonymous. Folks who are addicted, they come, they talk, they support each other. Oh no, shame. But can we actually have a conversation about this? Can we deal with it? It's a question we have to ask ourselves. And so I did want to talk about how we deal, especially with our friends and family who are dealing with either addiction or depression or abuse, how we treat them, how we deal with them. But inshallah, I don't have the time. Maybe next time, inshallah, someday we'll discuss that topic. But at least for today, what I want to leave you with is that there are these 4 myths we need to really break out of. And secondly, as a family, as a community, number 1, we need to have an open line of communication. We need to be able to deal with these issues. And secondly, be able to have help and seek the help. If someone in your family is dealing with any of these illnesses, or they're in an abusive relationship, it comes in a hadith. Prophet says, all conversation are amana, except if someone's trying to harm themselves or someone else. That's the exact thing they teach you in therapy. Every conversation is private, is secret, is confidential, except if someone is trying to harm themselves or harm someone else. If you or someone in your family is dealing with either an abusive relationship, or they're addicted, or they have depression, or they have anxiety, or they have eating disorder, it's your responsibility for you to be able to support them, make them feel okay, comfortable, and then being able to help them seek the treatment that they need. There's no shame in this. Just like you have illnesses physically, you have illnesses psychologically, whatever the cause might have been. I pray Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they allow us to be able to slowly begin to address these topics, be able to deal with these issues that are really affecting our community, our young people, our sisters, our elders, and inshallah come up with concrete solutions as community and as families. Jazakumullah khairan. Any question, comments, I will take. I really just went really fast through so much I wanted to share. But inshallah, I hope this at least got us started to talk about these things. With that, inshallah, any question, comments, I will be glad to inshallah address them. If not, anyone? And no, if you raise your hand, it doesn't mean you have a problem. Not, I'm going to raise my hand if they're going to know I have a psychological problem. No, it's not that. You're asking question on benefit of the community. Okay. Yes. See how that worked out? Very good. Yes.
I think this is a very important topic, number 1.
Yes.
I'm a physician myself.
MashaAllah.
So it's a very important topic. And I think, honestly, we should have some kind of seminar in our community. I see a lot of problems.
Yes.
In youth and boys and girls.
Yes.
So So I think it's a very timely topic, and we should concentrate more in future
Inshallah.
how to discuss and how to go forward.
Inshallah, alhamdulillah, if people like you encourages more and brings it up, I'm sure the organizers will feel more encouraged and good to do these. Yeah.
So, what kind of programs have you done at community level, and how have people responded on a community level?
Sure. I think the first thing. Sorry, repeat the question. So the first brother here, I want to mention that he's a physician and that he's very happy to see such timely topic being addressed, and I agreed with him, and that we should continue and to expand these discussion and programs. And our brother here asked what are some correct me if I'm wrong, what are some programs that are done in the community level and what the response we have gotten. So I would say that the first thing is we need to have more of these, because you can't jump into having a lot more concrete programs or have counselors at your massages. That's the goal. To have I think the masjid already has to have folks have professionals available to be able to have longer discussions and seminar and training for parents who might to know how to deal with children that might be addicted. Having seminars and workshops for women so they can help other sisters who might be in an abusive relationship. True. But I think before that, what you guys are doing is really the way to go, which is being able to address little by little at our khutbas, at our talks, at gatherings like this, so that we can slowly begin, tear down the wall and the stigma first. Because I think that's firstly what holds us back. If people know that this is real, and this actually exists, and there are actually solutions for these things, then I think people begin to open up, and they put more pressure on the community to be able to come up with programs. So when people feel like, okay, I'm not going to be ashamed for it, this is real, I'm being legitimized on the minbar about it, then they can open up about it. So I would say that's first thing. So definitely having more awareness. That's the first thing. Concentrate for the next 1 year, just awareness. Talk about what is depression. Talk about what is anxiety. Talk about abuse in depth. What is happening? What are the signs? How do you know someone who's in an abusive relationship? You can tell the sister might be in an abusive relationship where she can't, she stays in the house. She's already wearing long sleeves because she was hiding her bruises. She has one too many accidents. Sister, what happened there? Oh, it's an accident. I fell when I was cooking. I got a little burn. Really? You have that every week? No, the person could be a bad cook, but beyond that, it sometimes it's true. And so we have to see the signs in our teenagers. If we see them always getting angry, all of a sudden, you see them always hiding, always ashamed, dominant. There's these signs that you and I need to really learn. So awareness, first thing, through lectures, through talk, through pamphlets, through whatever it takes, bring awareness to the community. And inshallah, I think that will get you on a roll. And then programs will develop, other more expanded things will happen. Any final questions, comments? Okay, all right. Oh yeah.
Just a quick announcement.
Yeah.
Jazakumullah khairan, Brother Mohammad Hasan. He traveled all the way from Jamaica, Queens to be with us. Tonight he's going to be speaking at 9:45 again about relating the ayahs of the Quran that were going to be recited in Taraweeh with the issues that were discussed today. Then inshallah tomorrow after Asr we're going to have Dr. Hassan Miraj talk about addiction as a clinical subject, as well as the therapies and some of the more deeper diagnostics of it. So inshallah we'll be discussing that tomorrow, and we'll continue